Well, hi, I'm Scott Vaughan. I'm the 89th president of the Rotary Club of Tucson. That was in the years 2009, 2010. This message, these remarks are being taped about 7 years later. I was 65 then, and I'm 72 now. And I'll tell you a little bit about myself. I was raised in New Jersey and then in Arizona, and I came to the University of Arizona as a freshman in '61 and developed a career in television. I had 3 television stations that I managed, including K-Gun TV right here in Tucson. And after 30 years of broadcasting, I switched to financial services and became a wealth management advisor for Merrill Lynch, a position I retired from just about a year ago. I'm married for 50 years as of this year, and have a grown son and a grown daughter and a granddaughter who's 12, and she's far from grown. So that's my background. When I became president, Charlotte Harris was president before me, and then Mary Ann Friedas came after I did and cleaned up the mess that I created. My background in Rotary started in Palm Springs in the 80s, where I was one of the founding members of the second club in Palm Springs, a breakfast club. And after that, in Tucson, my first Rotary club here was the Catalina Rotary Club. They met at the Arizona Inn. It was and still is a great, great club. But I was not able to stick it out there because of my business pressures, rubbing up against the more stringent attendance requirements than Rotary has now. Rotary is a lot more welcoming and a lot less restrictive on your time. And then in 1996, Brett Houston invited me to, or nominated me for membership of the Rotary Club of Tucson, and that's just one of the best things that's ever happened to me. I probably still didn't get it when I joined the Tucson club, as most Rotarians eventually do get it. And when I say get it, I mean having a sense of power that I have truly become a Rotarian. And that happened to me after a community service project, or an international project actually, that I had the opportunity to co-lead with Kathy Kitagawa. I went to the president, John McCaleb, and said, John, I've been here a couple years and it's a nice club. I like coming to lunch. The people are friendly and we do some nice projects, but I'm not really engaged. So he opened his eyes wide and put on this big smile and said, have I got the job for you? And he asked me to join Kathy in co-leading a project that was going to collect money from our club members, create a relationship with another club in Puerto Vallarta, Mexico, use the money to buy 480 wheelchairs, and then have the wheelchairs shipped directly to Puerto Vallarta. And then a group from our club went to Puerto Vallarta, this was the moment for me. We actually distributed the wheelchairs. We picked people up and put them in the first wheelchair they'd ever been in, creating mobility for them that would serve them well for that part of their lives. And wow, to me, I still look back on that, and I'm grateful to John McCaleb for having given me that opportunity, and to the club members who supported this cheerfully and heartily by funding the necessary money to buy the wheelchairs from an outfit called the Wheelchair Foundation, which was Rotary International affiliated. I think we had about 20 people fly to Puerto Vallarta. I remember names like Herb Bloom, for instance, who's no longer with us, was a great club member, and all the good things we accomplished down there. Anyway, that's how Rotary really finally grabbed me.
So then you became president.
Then I did.
Wow.
I did. And that was an interesting process. You know, once you start providing leadership in a committee, what happens? Other committees or other presidents want to get you more involved in their committee as well if it appears that you provide some useful leadership. And one of the things I did maybe on purpose a little bit because of my TV background, is I looked for committees I could serve on that would also create some visibility for myself, in order that I might have more opportunities to say, yeah, I'll do this, or I'll grow with the club and I'll grow into whatever leadership opportunities are there. and Roger Harwell tapped me as his sergeant-at-arms, which meant I get a microphone every week. Wow.
That's dangerous.
Wow. Did I love that. Roger, already has a great sense of humor. And the Sergeant-at-Arms has the opportunity to add a little more fun to the meeting as well. And I think Roger and I played off really well with each other, and I know he genuinely appreciated my contribution, even though we created the illusion that we were stealing time from each other, which was part of the fun we had. The theme of my year, 2009-2010, was the member experience, and it was something I felt like there was a real opportunity to transition some experiences to something more positive. Has anybody heard of the internet? Well, the internet was coming along, and a lot of our members hadn't really embraced it at serious levels, but the ones that had said, any business or any organization is using these new tools to their advantage more than our club is. So we looked into various ways to do that. And one of what I would regard my accomplishments is to help bring the club, or help the club take some steps toward the electronic attributes that are available today. For example, for all of the 88 years up until then, we published a weekly bulletin, or if not for all of the 88 years, maybe for many of those years. And beginning in my term, we put the bulletin in the form of an email bulletin called the E-to-Sotarian, and it's working pretty well. It's delivered to every member's in basket at the same moment, usually on sometime between Friday and Monday. And it has a lot more information, a lot more content than the previous bulletins did. In addition, the club has a website now, both for internal communication with its members. It's an easy place for me as a member to go look at the latest roster and see who's in, who's not in, or look at upcoming events. But even members of the public can go to the public area and find out a myriad of things that Rotary does, and how to contact Rotary when we meet. And in fact, it encourages people to consider visiting a meeting, getting to know a Rotarian, with the end result is hopefully some of you might decide that it would be good part of your life to have Rotary in your life as a member of the club.
Well, Scott, what were some of the highlights of your year as president? There were many, but pick out a few and share them with us. Well,
there were many. I think the best highlight, and something that I think really made me look like a good leader, was I had officers and board members who were just extraordinary. And in addition to that, we have a structure of committees in our club. We have a zillion committees. We have a structure of committees where there is a hierarchy, or an organization chart, if you will, so that each committee answers to a member of the board. So a board member might be responsible, or would be responsible, for several committees.
So Scott, tell us who was on your team during your year as president?
The board of directors and the officers I had were just phenomenal. They included Pat Zumbush as treasurer, Pauline Heckler as secretary, Charlotte Harris as past president had an awful lot to contribute. Dave Gallagher I chose as my sergeant-at-arms, and he added a really fun aspect to the meetings. And Mary Ann Freitas was president-elect. In addition, I had board members Cindy Godwin and Ken Light, Jim Lubinsky, who was over international service, Rita Marshall, who was in charge of membership, John Lewis, public relations, Steve Christie, club administration, and John Wong was on as well, as in that he was the chair of our third annual fundraiser, the Tucson Classics car show. It continues to go and build, and now for the last 3 years, each year at the conclusion of the show, we've been able to deliver checks exceeding $100,000 to 4 to 6 major local charities. And it's like a small corporation in the way that it runs. It's got its own leadership team, and it's just a phenomenal thing to be a part of. And it's really part of the glue that holds our members together. Keeps us keeps us engaged, I might say. What else? Well, let's see. Other highlights included our annual San Carlos Children's Project. It's a project that was 19 years old already when I had the opportunity to do it in my year, and it's the kind of project where a group of Rotarians, in cooperation with the San Carlos Rotary Club, would travel to San Carlos and then do a project to better the community. Things like we built a water tower to provide water to one little village that didn't have any running water. We built on a library to an existing school, and then started providing books, computers, internet, lots of things that were pro-education for this pretty poor area of the San Carlos area. In addition to that, we looked for new revenue sources for the club, and because this was a period after the 2008-2009 financial crisis, where across the country, including here, things got really tough for some members of our club and some members of the community. There were layoffs at various job situations. The real estate economy was also pretty lousy, and there were members of our club that had serious reservations as they had to downsize their expenditures in their life of whether they could even continue as Rotary members. So the club's size, which for the last 5 years had been gradually in the area of 275 to 255 members, kind of bottomed there in 2008, 2009. And even though we always had lofty goals to replace members who were departing, it's only in recent years, and I'm speaking 2014, 15, 16, where we have shown significant gains again in our membership, and we're working up toward the club size that we envision eventually, which is about 300 members. I think the club was almost there once. I'm not sure that it ever actually got there, but there's an awful lot of service that can be provided by a club that's that strong a force. One of the things we accomplished in my year was the establishment of a public relations function. We hadn't really had it in much depth before that, but our car show, one of the aspects that made our car show so successful for 3 years in a row was the awareness and participation in the Classics car show that was driven by running a public relations engine. In my year, that was fueled by Mary Martin and Mary Pat Zepeda. They did clever and creative messages that they were prepared and distributed to media all over southern Arizona, and the media was donated because the end result of these funds was going to go to local charities. So to this day, Mary Martin continues to do a beautiful job of acquiring media support that enables our fundraiser to be so successful, and therefore our financial support of these community entities. So it was during my year that we proudly announced the creation of our club's own public relations department or committee. So we also in my year had an event or two that I would describe as community-wide events. And when I say community-wide, I say, why not, since our club is so big and so strong, in fact, the number of members at the dozen or so other Rotary clubs in Tucson about equals the number of members of our club alone. So for some, we had speakers that were so good and we knew would be such a draw. Why not welcome all Rotary in the Valley to come on in and be with us? And we did that with Greg Byrne as he arrived in Tucson as the new athletic director of the University of Arizona. And as many of you know, he's a great speaker, and events like that, when we did them, worked out very well for everybody. The other Rotary clubs appreciated it. They brought guests as well, and we gave a really strong force in terms of a participating audience to the speakers that we tried to acquire. And that helped us, helped our program committee develop better and better programs. And to this day, we're very proud of the programs that we're able to do. That year, we also did a community event around the Arizona the Arizona Town Hall in conjunction with the Casas Adobes Club. Mike Harris engaged that one for us. And Mike also prepared another meeting for us to describe a concept of what if El Tour de Tucson and Rotary's Polio Plus initiative combined their efforts, and what could that grow to? And Mike's no longer with us, but Mike passed away probably 5 years ago, but the ball that he started rolling has become a phenomenal fundraiser for Rotary International's polio eradication campaign, and we're just very, very proud of our small role in that. We used that year to focus a little bit more on business relationships. In fact, when Paul Harris started the Rotary Club, or started his Rotary Club, the beginning of Rotary, more than 100 years ago, it was a focus. It was a half a dozen businessmen that got together over lunch and just talked about community, talked about their business, did business with each other, and did some community service. Well, the business aspect of having a Rotary Club meeting has ebbed and flowed, and this was a point where Rotary International has finally acknowledged that yes, of course, business is part of the roots of why Rotary was established. When you come to a Rotary meeting, it's perfectly appropriate to be aware of what business the people that are around you happen to be in, and support each other. If I know a plumber in the Rotary Club and I don't know any other plumbers, or I do know other plumbers, and suddenly I have a plumbing problem, I know who I'm going to call. And we're trying to push that aspect out into our club members. And one of the ways we've done that is during my year, we created the concept of a Rotary Club sponsorship. What's a club sponsorship? You, as a member, have the opportunity to add to your dues once a quarter a small additional stipend. In that case, it was $99 a quarter. And for that, what you're entitled to is public appreciation, public awareness in our club of what you do for a living, and that you have deliberately decided to put extra money into the club's coffers in order to create this awareness and in order to support the club in times when financial issues were heavier than normal, let me put it that way.
Scott, you sure had a lot of highlights in your year, but I'll bet there were some challenges too. In the 10 minutes we have left or so, let's talk about some of the unique things that happened during your year that were particularly challenging.
Well, okay. I did take this tumble at McHale Center. I was with...
Tumble? What's a tumble?
What's a tumble? That's when at halftime you have a handful of bottles of water and you're taking them to your Rotarian guests who were fortunate enough to be with you on row one on a Wildcat basketball game.
Yeah.
And then you stumble and you fall down and you can't get up. So the deal was I separated this tendon from my quad muscle on my right leg. And I go to try and move my leg and my brain is moving it, but the leg's not moving. So the end result of that is that I was carried out of McHale Center and put into an ambulance and had about a 4-month recovery period after surgery.
And you had to be at the podium every week.
Well, or somewhere near it, yeah. And but more important than that, I was an inconvenience to everybody, because I've had friends that had to drive me here and there or push my wheelchair around. Thank you very much.
Yes.
And that was one of the things. But that's not the most important thing. I think the most important other challenge had to do with the club's reputation and the club's finances. And I explained it to the club this way on February of 2010. A former employee has, over a period of time, stolen money from the club. The club officers discovered the theft and had it verified by an outside accountant. While we do not yet know the exact amount of the theft, we can assure you that the club's current financial position is strong. We continue to be in good standing with all of our vendors. As of year end, we were reasonably close to our operating budget as well. but there may be some cash flow challenges in the months ahead. The funds involved are only from the operating account. There has been nothing irregular about the charitable funds that are involved. We've engaged services of professional accountants and club members who are attorneys and insurance people, and they're assisting your officers and your board of directors in determining the best course of action. 3 courses have already been identified for the possible restitution to the club of the money, and they're all being pursued. The club officers have been on this issue from the start, and they are your president, also Charlotte, Mary Ann, and Pat Zumbush, and Pauline Heckler, all the officers working together. Possible legal action necessitates we don't discuss specific details at this time, and we will provide you more information as it's appropriate, certainly at the club assembly on March 24th, which is about 5 weeks away.
Wow, how did that get resolved, Scott?
Well,
If it did.
this is my proudest accomplishment, actually, Bob, and that is we got the money back. The money was in the neighborhood of, well, it was in mid five figures, let's put it that way. And the perpetrator, who had already been criminally charged, not through action of the club, but through action of the local police, who were required to do so. I developed a telephone relationship with her father in California, and over a period of time, he felt that the best end result for his daughter, and which would also be the potential for reduction or elimination of charges, would be for the money to be restored to the club. And he stepped up and did just that. So we got the money back as a result of my negotiations with the father and discussion of what's best for her.
That's huge.
Yeah. And then subsequently she went through a required Pima County program of rehabilitation, and all charges were dropped, and I think everybody benefited from that. Good for all concerned, you might say.
Yeah, that's very good. 4-way test.
Yeah, yeah.
So you've had quite a year, Scott. Lots of accomplishments, lots of challenges, both personal, physical, and emotional. But now, looking back, you said you were president 7 years ago. What advice would you give to a member who aspires to be president? What wisdom have you gained looking back, and what advice would you give to another?
Run for cover.
Oh, no. No, that's not what I was asking.
Come on, I first had trepidation when I was honored to be asked president. I said, you know, I've got this job as a financial advisor with Merrill Lynch, and how much time am I going to take away from that and my productivity? But on the other hand, my ego drives me, and my leadership engine drives me to consider taking this on. And I did, and I'm so glad that I did. And I was right on all respects. It did take time away from my business, and that was a sacrifice that was okay. It was also a sacrifice for my family. My wife Margie became the first lady of the club and was deeply engaged in most of the club's aspects with me, but it was a change of direction for her as well. But on balance, when you look at the fact that you got to engage all of your leadership potential, and you got to have that wonderful feeling of the view from the podium, which is a phenomenal view.
It is. I like it.
It has to be the greatest experience of my life. And I would advocate to anyone looking for advice that they consider both what the cost will be and what it means to them to have the potential for the greatest experience of their life.
I would imagine that being president would take all the time you would give it. How did you set a boundary between personal, business, and Rotary? You must have done that somehow, because it takes all the time you can give it, and you gave it a lot of time.
Yeah, but I think any of us who've gone through that, and you know this, we have an opportunity and a capacity for throughput of a lot of stuff. And it was just a challenge to find out how much capacity that I have, and to make sure I'm touching the important bases in all the zones I'm in. And it worked just fine. I have no regrets whatsoever.
Well, as a view from the floor, you did a great job, Scott. We were lucky to have you as president.
Well, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.